Hey everybody, James again here with the Wisdom of Delivery Men. I'm actually taking an off day, the first off day in 7 days of delivery. I'm sure a lot of you working guys can relate. I want to talk just very briefly about the Romans. Now you hear the term Romans and Roman Empire a lot. It's pretty well established who and what the Roman Empire was, as it was a political institution with easily defined borders, defined government, army, infrastructure, all the hallmarks of an actual society. But trying to define who the Romans actually are is a little tricky. So if you ask the Romans who the Romans were, that would be the first step, and that would be pretty complicated. So if you ask the Romans who the Romans were, they would overwhelmingly say that the upper to upper middle class, and certainly the aristocracy of Roman elites, Roman knights, the equestrian class, the senatorius class, the senator class, and certainly most of the Roman military were Romans, and their families were Romans. However, the mass of the Roman population, probably 65%, of Rome was not comprised of those groups. The mass of the Roman population was comprised of slaves, of freedmen, so of former slaves, and then of basically non-citizens or citizens who were granted citizenship by imperial edict. To the Romans, those people were not Romans. To the Romans, those people were Celts or Picts or Croats or Dalmatians. They were, later on, they were Goths, they were Judeans, they were Egyptians, but they were not Romans. However, even if we unpack that term of what Roman is and kind of break it out beyond just a definition of essentially social class, the term Roman becomes problematic. So the Romans, as we would understand them, were primarily comprised of 7 to 12 Latin tribes that lived in central Italy about 500 years before the birth of Christ. So they were the Latins. To say that everybody living in Italy was Roman would be a misnomer. Southern Italy was colonized by the Greeks, and most of Italy was actually conquered by the Latins coming from Rome, and was conquered through a complex series of wars, but then also mainly through alliances. Now, eventually, a lot of that territory was assimilated by the Latin Romans. However, that assimilation was never fully. And even if you look at Roman sources like Cassius Dio, Plutarch, Livy, they still, when they describe Italy, still describe it in a tribal sense. They divide out parts of it as belonging to certain, kind of ancient or semi-mythical tribes that supposedly occupied those lands, the tribe of Scatini, Suebi, et cetera, et cetera. Are they Romans? Again, according to the Romans, according to those authors like Cassius Dio, they are not. As historians and as people looking back on an empire that hasn't existed for thousands of years, we will consider them all Romans because they were all the people living inside the Roman Empire. They were the people living inside the core province, the most important province of the Roman Empire, which was Italy. But again, according to the Romans themselves, the people that actually were the Romans, the term Roman is certainly not applied to everybody within the Roman Republic, and it's definitely not applied to everyone in the Roman Empire. Now, if we look at the later definition of Romans, if we look at the definition of the Romans after the Principate, the primary empire that lasted to about the 230s, the definition of Romans gets even more complicated. So again, in the later parts of the empire, every person living in the empire was given de facto citizenship by the Roman state, which was actually a major error on the part of the Roman state because it eliminated the need to serve in the legions or to serve in a government role in order to earn your citizenship. However, the people that were living in the Roman Empire towards the end of the empire were in a constant state of flux. Groups would move in, groups would move out. The Romans would lose provinces. They would get those provinces back, like Dacia, like parts of Britain, parts of Syria. Armenia, Lesser Armenia, and those people would, lose their political allegiance to the Roman Empire. They'd be part of another empire, but they would still have a Roman identity according to themselves. But again, not according to the rulers of the Roman society. Again, the rulers of the Roman society really, truly only considered the upper, middle, and upper and aristocratic classes as Romans. Everyone else was essentially just, like a mass of non-Roman peasants that could be exploited. This is played out in all of the sources. This is played out in all of the later histories. Again, I'll mention Cassius Dio, who talks extensively about people's family lineage. And also towards the end of the Roman Empire, you start getting this concept of what's called a true Roman. General Aetius, supposedly was the last true Roman. And what they mean by that in the sources is that he was the last person that he could trace his Roman lineage all the way back to the early Republic, to the original families that founded the Republic, 600 years before the birth of Christ. But again, the people living in the Roman Empire, were they Romans, right? Maybe. So then it gets even more complicated when the empire unofficially splits in the 360s and then officially splits in 395, 396 after the disastrous loss at Adrianople. So now you have a situation where you have two empires. You have the Eastern Empire and you have the Western Empire, both of which are maintaining that Roman identity. Now the Western Empire quickly falls within 60 years, 70 years of the partitioning of the empire. The Western Empire is occupied and then assimilated by a number of Germanic and Slavic tribes. The Burgundians, the Franks, the Lombards come in later, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Anglo-Saxons. They inherit the empire and they intermarry with the Roman population, which again wasn't considered really Roman. Now, if you look at those sources, the little sources that we have, those people considered themselves Roman. Odoacer, right, formed the Kingdom of Italy, but his full name was Flavius Odoacer. He took a Roman name to legitimize himself and to make him seem more Roman and more palatable to the people he was ruling. And you'll see this in a lot of the inheritor kings in Spain with the Visigoths, the Vandals, and then certainly with the Franks. Now, if we shift back to the East, in the Eastern Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire continues and maintains its quote-unquote Roman identity. However, after the 550s, it really tries to focus on its Greek identity. The Eastern Empire really tries to consider itself a Greek society and not a Roman one. So again, when we talk about who the Romans are, it often depends on our perspective, but there are some clear lines that you can explore.